Well, hello. Thank you very much for coming along to listen to me. My name's Caroline Warman. I'm a professor of French literature and thought at Oxford University, and I particularly work on the 18th century and the French Revolution, which started in 1789 and which is best known perhaps now to people like us for its trio of terms: liberté, égalité, fraternité, liberty, equality, and fraternity. So yeah, what a jammy job I have. How great. What I do is I teach French language and literature at Jesus College. And I look after all of the language students that we have. So our current students are studying Arabic, Portuguese, Spanish, French, Italian, German, Russian, Polish, and Hebrew. And in the past, they've also studied Czech, Turkish, Yiddish, Welsh, Irish, and modern Greek. And I won't overwhelm you by telling you what they're studying all of these languages in combination with. So I'm wondering, I mean, I can't ask you, but I'm wondering what languages you all speak. So I'm assuming you're pretty good at English, and lots of you may be Welsh speakers or at Welsh medium schools. Lucky you. And amongst you, there may also be speakers of Bengali or Urdu, Punjabi, Mandarin, Cantonese, Pashto, Albanian, Yoruba, as well as the languages I've already mentioned. So Russian, Polish, Arabic, and there are different sorts of Arabic as well, and French and Italian and Spanish, Portuguese and German. Perhaps there are some Norwegian speakers or some Dutch speakers. Some of you might be learning ancient languages like Latin or Greek, or you might be learning languages like Hebrew or classical Arabic through classes to read religious texts. And whatever languages you do or don't speak, whether you happen to have the good luck already to have more than one language through interesting circumstances or family connections, or like I did, you just started learning last year when you were 11, we're all learning languages. So we're all in the same boat and we all can learn languages. And that's what I want to get across to you. Whether you've already had opportunities to learn new languages or not, you can all learn new ones, and you can do it brilliantly, whether or not you've already decided that you're not good at languages or not as good as what's-her-face in the class who always does better than you. You can all do it. So firstly, you all already speak loads of different languages or dialects without even realizing it. When you text, use Snapchat or Instagram, you're already using different sorts of register, style, spelling, and vocabulary, let alone saying things in a completely different way and form from how you speak. And how is that not a language of its own? I know it's a different language, all this social media language, because I can't understand it very well. I can't speak it at all. So as well as the different languages of social media, there are languages of song and music, which say different sorts of things in different sorts of forms and make it possible for you to think about different sorts of things as well, access different parts of you emotionally or whatever. So, and let alone, on top of all of that, there are the different ways in which you talk to your siblings or your friends, your parents, your teachers, and they all involve different styles, different registers, as we call it, different levels of formality and different vocab. Think of the effort you have to go to not to use swear words when you speak to teachers, grandparents, parents, etc. That swearing is a sort of language is captured in that phrase, excuse my French, which people used to say quite often when they used a swear word, and it always annoys me a lot, I can tell you. But it's just about, using swear words is a form of emphasis in your language, and it's a particular way of speaking which you have to adapt. You can't use it all the time, right? So you tell me that these aren't all languages and different sorts of language. Of course, you can't actually tell me that because this is pre-recorded, so it's my clever way of avoiding backchat. So now that we've already established that you're all fluent in a number of languages already, let's talk about why it's a good idea to add more and to work hard at getting good qualifications in languages, GCSE, A-level, degrees, etc. Now, this must feel like a long way away, but it's a good idea to have an idea of why it's useful and why it's worth your while slogging away at your homework, embarrassing yourself in front of the whole class when you get things wrong. And it may have escaped your notice, but it may not have done, that we happen to be in a political context which happens not to be valorizing language learning at the moment in particular. So while we all know why it's a good idea to try to be a scientist, particularly the inventor of a vaccine, or an engineer, or a lawyer, or a doctor, we might be less sure why we'd want to speak a foreign language or what use it has. Of course, your teachers will be telling you how brilliant it is, but I thought I'd add a few ideas to what they've already said. So let's start at the baseline. Language is what differentiates humans from animals. I'm not getting into the fact that animals can obviously communicate in various different ways. Okay, let's just agree that language is more complicated as used by humans than it is by animals. Okay, let's just agree about that. So language is what differentiates humans from animals. Human brain size and the use of language go together, right? So it sounds like a basically good idea to explore, study, and develop our knowledge, not just of one language, but of more than one language or lots of languages. Don't you think? Because this is fundamentally what humans are good at, what our brains have evolved to do, what characterizes them. And perhaps it'll make our brains grow as well. Although I'm sure all hard work and thought does that. I would not wish to suggest that the only way of getting a big brain is by learning languages. That would be rude of me. So, secondly, right, it's an absolutely concrete skill to be able to speak other languages to a high level, and it gives you a USP, a unique selling point. It's why I personally decided to focus on languages back in the Stone Age when I was young. I loved history and literature and art and culture in all forms. I'm an absolute sucker for every part of the humanities. And I thought I can do all of that stuff, which I love, and I can also learn a skill that will allow me to speak, write, and understand a foreign language that makes me super useful in a foreign country when most people I'm with can't speak that language, or when people from abroad who don't speak English need help. Those other people are completely unable to function without somebody to translate, and they will need me. Makes me useful, right, in an absolutely basic sense. And so, personal anecdote, this in fact happened to me when I was only 18. I found myself being a simultaneous interpreter between English and Italian in an Italian court of law. Can you believe that? And that's not because I was a genius. I had no family background in Italian of any sort whatsoever. I'd done an A-level in 2 years. And as part of my gap year before going to uni, I went to Rome to be a babysitter, an au pair, and to improve my Italian. And then somebody needed me. And I don't think I was a very brilliant, spontaneous interpreter, but I was the person who was on the spot. I expect I made quite a lot of mistakes in translation in both directions, but I tried and I learned. Nobody shouted at me. So that's useful for you. So to extend the question of skills, into a more general sort of question, what can one do with languages? There are all sorts of things. You can be a translator or an interpreter, as already suggested. One can take up, of course, the extremely honourable profession of teacher, which is exhausting but rewarding and fun. And one can do that at school, at university, or wherever. One can go into the civil service. Okay, so I know that is a bit sort of like, what does that even mean? Civil service, what is that? Okay, let me give you an absolutely specific example off the radio from a couple of weeks ago. So there's something called GCHQ, which is this huge place where people are listening in to the telly, the radio, reading the social media of the entire world in every single language. And there was a woman was on there, and she was, you know, she was from Yorkshire, and she had been looking at Chinese Twitter, and she was able to analyze from the style of the sorts of things that was being said, that it was censorship and not real, that there was what I mean is that it was governmental tweets attempting to influence a particular way in which something was seen, because they were using this super formal language. And I thought, I listened to that woman, I thought, you are a graduate of modern languages degree. I can tell that you are. And she's done that thing. She's understood a different language to an extremely high level. She can tell different styles. And so she's able to tell the British government that it is the Chinese government that is writing these tweets, because she can see that the style is not that of genuine youth culture, which she also knows. So, okay, so she's a civil servant. So there are people in all sorts of languages, I mean, in all of the languages, listening at GCHQ. Yeah, so civil service generally, but also diplomacy. Yes, I mean, I suppose you don't need to be very connected to the news at the moment to realise that understanding different points of view, being able to speak different languages and not just being in English is something that would benefit the UK at the moment. Because it seems to be annoying absolutely everybody. So yeah, we need good linguists in order to do the negotiating, in order to, you know, show the politeness that means that people will relax, trust, and so on and so forth. So diplomacy, journalism and international journalism of all sorts, something that I nearly did myself at one point, when I claimed to speak not only French and Italian and German, which was true to some extent, but also Russian and Arabic. That was on the basis of the fact that I had been to evening classes, which is true. I had been to evening classes, obviously it wasn't very well advanced, but there was something about the fact that I was willing to be tested on it, obviously made complete mess, but also learned from it, that stood me in good stead. Yeah, so journalism. And past students of mine have got all of these sorts of jobs. They're also lobbyists and activists. They're academics, writers, bankers, they're in business, they're lawyers, they're even doctors. Obviously that last bit required some retraining. But it makes that person, Hannah, is a great doctor. And she really listens to people. She knows how to listen. Of course she does, because she's fluent at a different language. So basically the world is your oyster. And for UK citizens, in the coming decades, it's going to be particularly your oyster. And there are very high employment of linguists in the marketplace, because the skills are very, very highly prized. So yeah, I mean, what are these skills? I mean, it's not just, you know, you might say to me, but listen, Caroline, I don't need to be fluent at Spanish to be, you know, a marketing manager or a lawyer or whatever it is. And I would be agreeing with you as long as, of course, you weren't being a marketing manager or whatever it was actually abroad. It's to do with something that I was just saying about seeing things from another person's point of view, not just in a sort of emotional, empathetic way, which, you know, is also the case. But, you know, as you know already, if you're already at a high level in different languages, a language is not just a series of words. It's a culture, it's a history, it's a way of seeing things. So there are very profoundly different ways of operating in the world, and linguists understand that because they've had to learn it. So what that means is that when you're working, if you then sort of turn that into a sort of transferable skill, is that linguists are really brilliant in the workplace and they're really good in a team because they understand other people. So that means that they're good leaders because they're listening, you know, they're just great. And this is absolutely known by employers. So that's given you, I've given you a sort of idea about, you know, what is humanity? Humanity is language. So that's been my first reason. My second reason is, you know, skills and very wide employability. So that's all very, you know, it's extremely important, right? But also, so my third reason is going to be simply that it's just amazing to be able to speak another language. It's mind-blowing, and it's not just about, therefore, being able to order a coffee in a different language, which is quite fun. And it's not just about being sensible about improving your job prospects, which is good. It's about having the doors of world history and culture opened to you. So when I was at school, I got to read incredible works of literature in the original. I read the letters that Gramsci, an Italian communist, wrote from prison to his Russian sister-in-law. I was like, communist? What's that? Italian communists, what are they? Why is he writing in Italian to a Russian woman? What is the connection between Russia and Italy? And why was he in prison? Because he sounds really nice. So it was quite an education, I can tell you. It's not just words on a page. And I also read short stories by the French writer Albert Camus. They were about the French in Algeria. I was like, why the French in Algeria? What's going on? When was this? And one short story was called L'Hôte, which means not just host. Perhaps you can hear that in hôte, which is written H-O with a hat, T-E. That's host. So there's a sort of similarity. It means not only host, it also means, in French, it also means guest, which are, you might want to point out, opposite meanings in the same word. And what it's about, this particular short story, L'Hôte, is about a French guy and an Algerian guy, and they're in Algeria, and it's not clear who's the host and who's the guest, or even whether the guest is welcome. And when you know that Algeria was invaded by France in the 19th century and violently colonized, and that what we're talking about here is whether it's okay for one country to invade another and feel superior to it, then it all makes sense. And all of that is in the title, L'Hôte, one word. So yeah, I learned things about the world that I would never have learned otherwise. and I learnt about them through a different point of view and through a different language. And I've never wanted to go back to a monolingual world with wall-to-wall English since then. For me, it's like having the visual world just in black and white rather than in colour. Of course, it doesn't have to be, French or Italian, which just happen to be the languages that I know well. It can be any language. So in sum, learning languages is 1, a fundamental human activity and property of the brain. 2, it is a highly prized skill in the marketplace and is likely to become more so. And 3, it's truly exciting to learn languages and discover the world through them and to travel and be able to speak. Imagine traveling at all. Imagine going, 5 miles down the road at the moment. But imagine being able to go to a different country and then be able to speak the language of that country and discover it. It's so exciting. And one might even wish to argue that it's morally important in this fractious world that we're in to be able to do that, to be able to speak different languages. But it's hard work sometimes, isn't it? Can it even be boring? Surely not. You have to do quite a lot of hard work before you can read the books and have the intellectual excitement I was talking about. And if you're a perfectionist, it's really annoying because you can be really good and have learned absolutely everything that you've been taught, and you can still be, in fact, not very good at that language. You know what I say to that? I say tough. I say be rubbish, make mistakes, learn how to make the mistakes and not feel rubbish. And that in itself is another transferable skill, my friends. Learn to be, learn to fail and then try again. And don't worry about it. So everybody makes mistakes. So let me tell you 2 examples in which I made mistakes in different languages, not in a court of law. So one was I went traveling with my friend Kate when I was 21, and we went to Scandinavia. We did not speak any of the local languages like Danish, Norwegian or Swedish, although we tried to learn some words, right? So in Norway, we stayed with some incredibly nice people. And when we left, we baked them a cake to say thank you. And on it, we iced the word thank you in Norwegian, which is takk. But we spelled it with only 1 K, so that what we actually gave them was a cake with the word roof on it, because takk, T-A-K, means roof in Norwegian, whereas takk with 2 Ks, T-A-K-K, means thank you. So that was incredibly embarrassing, what a laughing stock we were. And another time I was a language assistant in a French school. So I was a bit older. And one of the pupils said to me, "Mademoiselle, vous êtes terrible." And I got in a massive huff. And I said, "I was not terrible, boom, boom, boom." And he said, mais non, terrible ne veut pas dire ça. And in fact, terrible and terrible don't quite match up, although there are some areas which they do mean the same thing. But really what he was saying is that I was being like sort of scary and incredible. That's what he was attempting to to make me believe. But so, hey, I made a really basic misunderstanding in front of an entire class as the teacher. Like, that's not great, is it? But I survived. And everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. So let me tell you about something I discovered only last Monday. So I discovered this amazing Italian writer called Gianni Rodari, and he wrote for children. And one of his books is called Il libro degli errori, the book of mistakes. and it's made of poems based around habitual mistakes that little Italian kids make. And one poem is called Il Giro d'Italia. So, okay, what you need to know is that giro means dormouse, but giro is circuit or tour, as in the bike race, like the Tour de France and the Giro d'Italia, which is a punishing round Italy bicycle race, right? Got it? So we've got Giro and Giro. So the poem is about lots of little kids who've got confused and think they're lining up in the road to see the cyclists, but I'm mispronouncing Giro as Giro. So the poet is having a laugh about the idea of waiting to see a dormouse go past when a dormouse is asleep most of the time, can't ride a tricycle, let alone a bike. Incredibly sweet. Imagine it's a whole book full of the mistakes that they're making. So what I say to you is make mistakes and then write brilliant poems about them. But do sit down and learn words and genders and verbs and conjugation. You learn all the parts of the lung for biology, or whatever it happens to be, parts of the life cycle of the salmon. You learn complicated bits of maths with lots of separate processes. You learn about history, and there are loads of details. And I tell you what, you can sit down and learn words, and the more you know, the easier it becomes. So it requires some discipline and attention, but it is satisfying. And once you've learned one language, you can learn another because you understand how a language works better. Languages can be taken apart and inspected. And you'll be hearing about this more later from Jamie and Kinga. And it'll help you understand and use your own native language better, whether that's English or Welsh or another one. And we can all be linguists, even though we don't all have to be fluent. Some of you might get the bug and want to study languages at A level or beyond. And I hope you do, of course. But what I want to say is that you can all be good and valuable linguists just by learning what you can and valuing what you do learn, whatever level you achieve, by trying to have a go when you get the opportunity, by not getting too embarrassed, and by listening out for other languages and being interested in different ways of seeing the world and the different things those different ways of seeing show you. So go for it. Thank you very much for coming along. That's fantastic. And have a look at the Creative Multilingualism website, which my colleague Catherine Cole put up. It's really fantastic and has lots of brilliant resources. I wish we were all in the same room and I could talk to you and ask you questions and you could ask me questions, but never mind. So what I say to you is good luck with your language learning. Bon courage, bonne chance, coraggio, viel Glück, buena suerte, powodzenia, udaci, pobluk.